Coming up, are we facing the danger of civil strife following the 2024 election? I'll talk about that. Bill Waybourn, he's sheriff of Tarrant County, Texas, joins me. We're going to talk about how Biden and Harris have created a national crime wave perpetrated by the illegals they welcomed into this country. And I will draw on my book, Vindicating Trump, to talk about Trump as a marketing genius. Hey, if you're watching on Rumble or YouTube, listening on Apple, Google, or Spotify, please subscribe to my channel. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
America needs this voice. The times are crazy. In a time of confusion, division, and lies, we need a brave voice of reason, understanding, and truth. This is the Dinesh D'Souza podcast.
We are rapidly approaching the 2024 election day. And I was recently doing some media interviews, and an interesting question came up, which is, Dinesh, what do you expect will happen right after Election Day? Now, obviously, one possibility is that we don't have an immediate result. Things drag out, and there will be a period of nervous and agitated suspense. But the question really had to do with what about after that? There are obviously two possibilities. Trump wins and the Democrats go nuts, or Harris wins and the Republicans go nuts. And the question was framed kind of even-handedly, as if to say, well, are we facing a danger of some kind of civil strife provoked by the side that loses the election and is unhappy with the outcome? And it got me to think about that a little bit. And the equivalence that is being posited by this question is, as it turns out, I think a false equivalence, and let me explain why. For the Republicans, the only reason to freak out is the genuine conviction that the election has been stolen, that the election has been rigged in some way, that this is not a fair election, that Kamala Harris does not deserve to win, that some form of widespread or coordinated cheating has occurred, and Republicans will indeed go nuts. What they will do, I don't know exactly, but they will be hugely frustrated, and there will be a simmering anger across the Republican side. That is true. But what's interesting is that the same type of reaction, I think, will occur on the Democratic side, even if they absolutely know that the election was fair. In other words, I think the Democrats know that Republicans aren't going to rig and steal the election. This is not even brought up because Republicans have no way to actually do this. And so from the Republican side, if Trump wins, there really won't be any question that he won. He won fair and square. And yet, this is the point I'm making, unlike Republicans are the type of people where if we lose fair and square, we're begrudging, we're despondent, we're at least temporarily demoralized, but we're like, hey, those were the rules of the game. We played, we lost, we need to regroup, we'll try to do better next time. That's the Republican psychology. But it's not the Democratic psychology. The Democratic psychology is, how dare the American people have voted for this guy, Trump? Don't they know that he's a dictator? Don't they know the threat to the country and the world that we're going to be enduring now? And so we have every right to go insane, to try to block him, to try to prevent him from taking office if we can, to create civil strife if we have to. By any means necessary, let's try to undermine and torpedo this presidency. We saw this right after the 2016 election, and it's quite likely that we will see it again, which is to say that we would be in for some rocky times ahead. Now, if Trump wins and there is a widespread Democratic rejection of the outcome, which, by the way, I consider to be entirely plausible, then we will be, I hate to say it, but we will be in 1860 all over again. Why? Let's think back to what happened in 1860. Abraham Lincoln wins the election. No one denies that it's a free election. No one denies that Lincoln won the electoral vote, and he won the electoral vote so decisively that he beat Stephen Douglas, the Northern Democrat, and Breckinridge, the Southern Democrat, put together. So the South and the Democrats in the South were not saying that Lincoln stole the election. They were simply saying, we're going to cause civil strife no matter what, even though Lincoln won fair and square. And this is, I think, exactly where we might be post the 2024 election. The Democrats go berserk. They begin to obstruct. They begin to disrupt. They try to prevent Trump from taking office. They go to all lengths that they have shown themselves willing to go. They maybe try to revive their cases against Trump. And what is to be done in that situation? Well, I think the answer is really simple, because when I raised this in the interview I talked about, my kind of media interlocutor was like, well, this all sounds terrible, and what are the Republicans going to do? And the simple truth of it is the Republicans need to do exactly what Lincoln did. Now, the Lincoln situation was unique in the sense that there was an attempt to secede. I don't think we will see something quite the same, but I'm talking about Lincoln's basic approach. Here's Lincoln's basic approach. We have won the election fair and square. We are not about to cede the results of the election under any circumstances. So no disruption of our taking the legitimate hold of the government, which the American people through the electoral process have entrusted us with, is going to be given the slightest degree of toleration. You know how the Democrats say, never let a crisis go to waste? I say that if something very similar happens in 2024, we should not let a crisis go to waste. Let's recognize that under our constitutional republic, under our constitutional democratic system, the people award a mandate to the person who wins the election. That person then has the right to use all available power in order to consolidate that mandate, in other words, to do what the people have entrusted that person with doing, which is to take the reins of power. And if that is successfully disrupted, you don't have a constitutional democracy. Your country is basically gone. And so Lincoln often talked about ballots and bullets, but Lincoln's point is that ballots should determine the outcome. But Lincoln fully agreed, and this was the case in 1860. Lincoln's point is that bullets may sometimes be necessary to protect ballots. In other words, once the South secedes, Lincoln's point is you don't get the right to quit the country just because you don't like the result of the election. We have every right to stop you. And that involved a whole series of steps, initially calling up 75,000 volunteers, ultimately mobilizing the Union Army, all of the things that we know happened historically, and they're not going to happen in the same way. But the point I'm trying to make is that the Republicans understood then that in a crisis that was not caused by them, but that was caused by the Democrats, by the other side, an unwillingness to accept the results of an election, you cannot buckle at that point. You've got to recognize, listen, we've got a system, we've got a set of rules, and the reason that we have in the country police forces, the reason that we have federal authorities, the reason that we have a National Guard, the reason that we have a military, all of that is to protect our constitutional system. I mean, think about it. If another country invades, what are you protecting? You're protecting the geographical land of your country, true, but you're also protecting your system. You're protecting the way that the country is organized. You're protecting that from being overthrown. In a sense, if you're not protecting that, you could say, well, listen, you can come in and rule the country because, frankly, we don't care if America is a constitutional democracy or if it's ruled by another country. After all, the landmass of the country is still here. The people are still here. No, what we're defending isn't just America in that geographical sense or America in the sense of these are the American people. We're keeping them from being physically harmed. We're also protecting our constitutional arrangements. And so this is the point I want to leave you with, and that is that we don't know what's coming down the road. but it is worth thinking through what might happen. Why? Because it may call upon extraordinary resources on our side, a kind of extraordinary toughness that we have not had to show in our lifetimes. In fact, one has to go back historically to the 19th century, and this is why I'm giving you the example of Lincoln, is that Lincoln kind of came to Washington originally thinking, thinking that this was a crisis that he would try to avert or prevent. But he realized soon enough that I can't prevent it. States have already seceded before I got here. More states are going to secede or might secede, as in fact they did secede. And so Lincoln was in a situation not of how do I prevent secession, but what do I do now so that the people who are denying the outcome of the 1860 election cannot be allowed to reap the fruit of their destructive labors. They need to be stopped, and we might be in a somewhat similar situation, regrettably, if the Democrats don't accept the results of a legitimate outcome in 2024. There's a lot at stake in this upcoming election, but regardless of who's sitting in the White House, the fuse on the economy has already been lit. 4 years of a conservative presidency will not be enough to turn the tide on our $35 trillion national debt. And if the left wins, it's like throwing gas on a dumpster fire. You don't have much control over the election outcome, but you can diversify your savings now by investing in gold from Birch Gold, like Debbie and I have. For millennia, gold has stood firm in the face of greedy governments, economic upheavals, global strife, and it can help protect you now. Birch Gold, my gold company, will help you convert an IRA of 401k into an IRA in physical gold, and it doesn't cost you a penny out of pocket. In the past 4 years, the buying power of the US dollar has declined. The price of gold has increased 40%. Coincidence? I think not. Text Dinesh to 989898. Get your free information kit on gold. Trust Birch Gold as I do to protect your savings. Text Dinesh to 989898 today. FDNY firefighter Daniel Foley assisted in rescue and recovery efforts at Ground Zero, but Daniel couldn't have known then that his heroism would cost him his life more than 18 years later. His death, like so many others, resulted from 9/11-related illnesses caused by the toxic dust that formed when the Twin Towers collapsed. Victims and first responders are still suffering and dying from 9/11, and yet children in this nation are growing up unaware of America's darkest day. And this is where the Tunnel to Towers 9/11 Institute comes in. They're helping educators teach children about 9/11. Tunnel to Towers 9/11 curriculum units have scripted lessons, background for teachers, activities for students. They're based on first-person accounts and designed to meet academic standards. The 9/11 Institute offers the Discovering Heroes book series, a speakers bureau, a mobile exhibit with 9/11 artifacts, and memorial scholarships for the children of the Foundation's program recipients. Help our nation keep its promise to never forget. Donate $11 a month to Tunnel to Towers at T2T.org. That's T, the number 2, T.org. Guys, I'm delighted to welcome back to the podcast Sheriff Bill Waybourn. He's the sheriff of Tarrant County, Texas. He was elected in 2017, and he's served since then. He created two important divisions. One is the Human Trafficking Division. The other is the Intelligence Division, both aimed at protecting the residents of Tarrant County. And you can follow him on X at Bill Waybourn, Waybourn. Bill, welcome. Thank you for joining me. I really appreciate it.
Thank you. It's good to be with you.
We are heading into a presidential election, just a few days away, really. And there's a range of issues, as is typically the case when you have an election. But I think if I had to name one that is paramount, and that also strikes a deep chord among people, not just at the border, but really all over the country now, it is the issue of the porous or open border. Do you agree that this is the critical issue facing our country? And why is that?
I believe it is the number one issue facing our country, because regardless of where you're at in the country, in the U.S., you want us to be sovereign. And if we have people rushing over the border, we are no longer a sovereign nation. And, quiet invasion or whatever we want to call it. But, in the last 3.5 years, I've heard the numbers 10 to 20 million. That's a pretty big leap right there. If it's 10 to 20 million, then why not 25 million? We don't know. And I think people are concerned about that.
Now, all of this might be disturbing enough if we didn't have a legal process to come to this country. But isn't it a fact that over the past several decades, we not only have a legal process, but we take about 1 million legal immigrants a year. And they are in different categories. There's a family reunification category. There's a kind of skills category. There are other categories. So that there are ways to come to the country. And there are people who stand in line, go through the process. Talk about what it must feel like to someone who is standing in line. It's almost like you're standing in line at the post office to buy stamps, and then some guy just goes up to the front, collects his stamps, and takes off, and you're like, wait, what? Isn't it a mockery of our legal process to allow illegals in this way?
Absolutely. Is that it's a third world activity is what we're doing. It's not a sophisticated United States of America rule of law issue. And those migrants that are coming in legally, when I run into them, they're more furious than a lot of times we are about the illegal immigration coming over. And, they're standing in line, or they're trying to get to where they need to be so that they're legal. And these people are just, as you said best, they're making a mockery of it, and nothing is being done about it. And I think that, it's like anything else in life. If we're obeying the rules and somebody else isn't, it's offending, it's aggravating, and all of those things. But I think that this particular thing is all of those things on steroids when it comes to the border.
And in a way, even the banana republic analogy doesn't really work because, frankly, nobody wants to break into a banana republic, right? Nobody's trying to crash their way into countries that don't work. The reason that people want to come here is because this has been a well-functioning society. But isn't it true that when a society relinquishes its sovereignty and creates this kind of a kind of rush the border situation, that over time you find that the levers of the whole society begin not to function quite as well. Suddenly you discover that you got veterans being moved out of residence places to make room for migrants. Suddenly you find that resources that were allocated previously to disaster relief are now going to house illegals. So suddenly the normal functioning of government as it affects people is disrupted because, as you say, we're not talking about letting in a handful of people. You're talking about a number that significantly alters the overall demographic of the country.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And you're right, is that we can look at, for instance, France, who opened their borders at one time, and it's completely starting to change their culture, and they're trying to reverse that. And I think they're going to have a very difficult time doing it. I think Britain has woken up and said, wait a minute, we've got to stop some of this, because it changes the whole idea of those countries. And I can't imagine here in the United States that we change the most fundamental, greatest idea for a country that's ever happened, and we're allowing this open border to have an impact on our culture, on the way we do business. And it's certainly been a divisive point. From the sanctuary cities to the sanctuary states. Now you've got California, which is basically a failed state, and they're doing these things. And it's a huge change that we ought to be able to draw a line in the sand and put a stop to it and start the reverse. And we can't do that soon enough.
It seems, Sheriff Waybourn, that there is a group in the country. This is sort of the progressive logic or the progressive argument that somehow it's better for America to bring in a whole bunch of people who are different. As you know, the slogan, diversity is our greatest strength, is something that we've heard a lot over the past several years. Now, I grew up in India. I came to America initially as a student, but stayed on to get my green card and become a naturalized citizen. Here's my point. I mean, I always looked at myself as somebody coming from the other end of the world, but coming here because I like the way things are done in America. I'm looking to join the American team. I'm looking to assimilate to American society and live by the constitutional structure set up by the American founders, whom I admire. And it would seem to me that is a kind of model for what immigration should be. Bring people who want to join the club that you've set up and want to be members of that club. But would you agree that this sort of diversity rhetoric seems to imply that, if we get people who are not like us, don't like our culture, want to change it, that is a whole different idea of what America should be in the future? And it seems like the people who advocate that do want to change the complexion, not just the complexion and the physical complexion, the cultural and ideological complexion of America.
They really do. They're wanting to try to change our culture and our way of life. And when I talk to people out in the community, I always remind them that, the forefathers gave us 4 cornerstones. And one of those cornerstones was being a patriot, being a strong, loyal citizen. And when you come in and say, well, we want to do it like such and such country does it, or we're going to change it and disregard what American culture is, we're doing it this way, and you people should come alongside of us instead of us alongside of you. I think that's a horrific experiment that is going to cause long-term issues and it's going to affect our freedoms and our liberties of the future.
I mean, when I look at other countries, when I travel, you go to countries like, let's say, Japan, for example, and it's a very different culture. I'm not sure I would want to live in Japan. But nevertheless, I say to myself, this is a strong and kind of ancient culture, and they've got their own traditions and they live by them. So I think to myself, why on earth would I want to go over there and change the place? I mean, by what right would I go to Japan and tell the Japanese to stop being Japanese? Hey, guess what? You need a lot of people who come from El Salvador and India to make you better. I think they would look at me like I was out of my mind. So it seems like we have been infected perhaps by a way of thinking, and nobody else in the world thinks this way. Everybody else thinks, hey, listen, we've got a country. We have every right to protect it. We have every right to keep it the way we want. Sure, we admit some new members, but they got to come on our terms. So what was the turning point where somehow America decided that it was a good thing to bring in people who really want to change the club that they're coming to join?
That occurred in November of 2020. And the presidential candidates at that time talked about letting these borders open, talking about reversing all the policies that were down at the border, and they did it. On day one, they did it. And that began to turn this attitude and starting having this conversation. We'll just let them all come across the border, whoever's here. And remember, they were wearing Thank You, Joe Biden shirts coming across that. He appoints the vice president as the borders are. She does nothing. She concurs with his policies, and they threw those borders open, and everything started going, to use a kind of a weird term, going south on us. But literally it was coming north. But those people that are coming across that border unvetted, that some of them have no skills, no education, some of them are detrimental to our health. There's criminals among them. And we're seeing that all over the United States. And there's still, I saw the vice president ask directly, do you regret this? And she would not answer that question. So why should we think things are going to change if she's elected president? I don't believe that they will. But they carried on that rhetoric at a high pitch of what you just said, that this is okay. And I came from church today, heard a great sermon about God believes in boundaries. And in sovereignty. And this group started to say that's not necessary anymore, and we needed open borders. But it was 2020, November 2020, when this started, and it hasn't stopped.
Let's pause. When we come back, I want to ask you, Elon Musk said something very interesting. He said that this is very much part of a conscious project to create a political one-party state in America. And if Kamala Harris wins this election, and if we see a continuation of the policies of the past 4 years, then we might have hit that tipping point where the country becomes a one-party state, and it becomes very difficult to come back from that. We'll be right back. We are officially in the time of the year where eating becomes way off-balanced. Parties, holidays, family gatherings always mean more snacks, more sweets, generally indulging in all the wrong foods. And when your eating habits get off balance, so can you. And this is why I strongly recommend Balance of Nature daily supplements. This is it, the fruits and veggie supplements. They're sourced from whole fruit and vegetable ingredients, all the things you may be missing, all the things you need to make up being off balance during this eating season. Make sure you're getting more of a variety of fruits and vegetable ingredients every step of the way with Balance of Nature. Start a trend toward better health today with my special startup offer. Whether you order online or call them direct, you got to use promo code America. You'll get 35% off plus free shipping and a money-back guarantee. Here's the number to call, 800-246-8751. Again, 800-246-8751. Or you can go to balanceofnature.com. When you use discount code America, you get 35% off, you get free shipping, and you get a money-back guarantee. Mike Lindell is such a great guy, and he has a heart of gold. Mike and MyPillow are giving back to those in need. They sent a truckload of 14,000 MyPillows to those impacted by Hurricane Helene. But even though Mike loves to give back, a large retail store just canceled a huge order that had already left the warehouse. And so, besides giving to those in need, Mike wants to pass savings directly on to you. So for the first time ever, you get a standard classic MyPillow for wholesale prices, only $14.88. But it gets better. For a limited time, they're offering their entire classic collection at wholesale prices. Get queen-size MyPillows, just $18.88. Upgrade to a king for only $1 more. Get the body pillows for $29.88. Multi-use MyPillows, just $9.88. Here's the number to call, 800-876-0227. Again, it's 800-876-0227. Or go to mypillow.com. Use promo code Dinesh to take advantage of wholesale pricing for the first time ever. On top of that, get free shipping on orders over $75. This offer has never been this low before, so go to mypillow.com. Make sure to use the promo code. It's DINESH, Dinesh. I'm back with Sheriff Bill Waybourn. He's the sheriff of Tarrant County, Texas. Follow him on X, Bill Waybourn, Waybourn. Bill, Tarrant County, my mental map of Texas is hardly perfect, but are you a county that adjoins either Denton County or Lee County, one of those counties in the northern suburbs of Dallas?
Well, I have got on my northern border is Denton County up there, where we have a young congressman about to go to Washington that we're excited for him to go. Brilliant young man, and he's going to do good work up there. You may have heard of him. His name is Brandon Gill. Brandon
Gill. Let me see if that rings a bell. Very interesting. Well, I am acquainted with the gentleman in question, and look, he's a very smart guy. I know that there's a kind of a cesspool in Washington waiting, but I think this is a guy who's going to go in with his eyes open and make a difference. So that is quite interesting. But let's come back to what I was saying a moment ago about Elon Musk and this idea of creating a one-party state, the idea that if we let this continue, it's not just going to make things worse, but you might actually hit a political tipping point in which the country tilts to one side and it becomes kind of hard to come back. At least I'm reluctant to say we can never come back, but sometimes there are things that it takes you a generation to recover from.
You're exactly right. And it would take a generation. If we could imagine for a moment, if they really did pack the court, the Supreme Court of the United States, and enlarge that, created a state in Washington, D.C., where now they have 2 senators, and the same thing for Puerto Rico, then we've got big problems. I think that at that point, America is on a road that I won't see in my lifetime come back.
Oh, wow. Talk about, I want to get and give my audience a picture of what it is like on the ground dealing with this phenomenon of illegals who are let in. They're not let in by you. They're not let in by the state of Texas. They're let in by the federal government. And in some ways, you can't stop them from letting them in. What do you deal with once they're let in?
Well, first of all, let me add that Border Patrol is reporting that 66% of the cameras are out of service along our border. And this is mostly going to be in New Mexico and Arizona. And with that, we have no idea. Now, you heard the term, there's 1 million gotaways or 2 million. We don't know because the cameras aren't working. So we've got that issue. The border impact that has been on Tarrant County has been just a tremendous amount of drugs moving in. And we've seized millions and millions of dollars worth of drugs over the last 3.5 years, to the tune of enough fentanyl with all of our teams in the area to kill about 169 million people. That's the impact that they're having on us. The cartels are running the game. They're running the ground game, and human trafficking, drugs, and smuggling, which people get, smuggling and human trafficking, we look at 2 different things, is happening, and it's happening here. And another issue that's impacting Tarrant County, we just don't know the extent of it, is where are all these children? Where are they at that they have brought across the border? You talk about innocent lives that are being thrown to some wolves out there. We just don't know. So I think this impact is going to go on. If we shut the border today, it's going to take us 10, 12 years to clean up this mess.
Do you think it is feasible there's been some talk about deporting these people, returning them as families. I think part of what you're saying is that some of these people never were families to begin with. They might have shown up with kids to make it easier for them to get across, and then the kid goes one place and the adult male goes into a different direction. So it's not so easy to put Humpty Dumpty together again, is it?
No, it's not. And because we just don't know really what we have. And unfortunately, that's the facts. We don't know really the impact. We haven't fully seen it yet. We hear about a lot of military age males that have come across the border from, I think now 150 different countries are being represented down there. Enough military age males that even may outnumber our standing army. And that should give everybody pause on November the 5th when they go to vote, is that's what we have here in this country. And they come from everywhere. It's not, a lot of times they think, well, is this just Mexicans or South Americans? No, this is Chinese. This is Middle Easterns. This is Eastern Europeans. This is Russians. So we're seeing all of those people.
And isn't it true that when they are let in across the border, they might be given a court date, show up in Dallas, on June the 3rd of 2025. But in the meantime, isn't it a fact that nobody's exactly tracking them? They can go pretty much wherever they want. And if somebody were to say, can you find me this guy who's supposed to be in court on so-and-so date? Isn't it true that the U.S. government would go, we have no clue where he is?
That's exactly what would happen. And by the way, those court dates, there was an officer here in Tarrant County made a traffic stop just a little over a month ago, and a woman presented him with her court date. It's 2033 is when her
2033.
Yeah.
Wow.
Yes.
So in other words, I think what you're telling me is that the whole process is a farce. and the people who are implementing this policy know it is a farce, because the very idea, I know I go in for appointments, right? I go in for a doctor's appointment, wait for 45 minutes, the doctor will see you. But if I go to the doctor's office and they go, wait here, the doctor will see you in 2033, I would start laughing and leave, because I realize this is obviously a joke. I'm obviously being, on candid camera, whatever they call it. Our policy is absurd, and it is known by all parties to be absurd, but the beneficiaries of it are just playing along. They probably are thinking, what stupid people came up with this? We don't know, and we don't care, because we're benefiting from it, so let's go.
I think that's probably as good a summary as any. When that young lady gets to 2033, she's going to be married. She's going to have a house full of kids. She's going to be acclimated. She's going to appear to have a lot of American ideas. And now we're asking the judge to, hey, send her home, even though her kids and maybe her husband's an American. So I think there's a lot of factors that are going to come rolling into this that the American people haven't even yet to see.
Given the fact that there's all this, there's drugs, there is child trafficking, maybe sex trafficking, criminal gangs coming across the border, what is a possible motive for someone to have these kinds of policies? Because even though it may go too far to say that they actively intend these outcomes, at the very least, you could say that they are willing to tolerate these outcomes because of something that they are gaining out of the process. What is that something?
Well, I think we talked about it earlier. I think they want to head to a one-party system. And that's the only logical conclusion I can come to. I know I'm just a simple old cop, but what they're doing is letting all these people in and counting on at some point. And they've already argued about it on the floor of Congress to give them the right to vote. And once we get to there, then the payoff occurs to the Democratic Party. I think that's the only logical conclusion that I can come to is what they want. I don't know of anything else that they would be gainful for, because these people are going to cost us a lot of money. That, the ERs are they're not getting an appointment. They're going to ERs and they're being served. And they're going to our school systems, and there's a lot of school systems that are going off the rails because they're paying too much attention to the newcomers. So I think there's a lot of issues that haven't been completely counted into this variables, but they don't seem to care, and I think they're going to roll back and try to get to that one-party system.
And it seems to me, Bill, if that's the case, then it is the precise opposite of the campaign slogan that Kamala Harris and Tim Walz have been using, because I notice that when they say nice things about Dick Cheney or about Liz Cheney, they always use the slogan, country over party. So the Democrats are trying to make it seem like they are super patriots, they are putting the country first, and yet what you're saying is that on this critical issue, it appears to be the exact opposite. They're hurting the country, they know they're hurting the country, they don't mind hurting the country because it's going to give them some political benefits for themselves and for their own team.
That's what I'm saying. That's
wow.
Exactly. That's the only thing that I could come up with logically based on the evidence that I've seen. Why would you do this?
Why would you do this? Yeah, it is infuriating, and I think sufficient reason alone to vote against these guys. I mean, there are a lot of other good reasons to vote against the Democrats, but this alone is such a fundamental abrogation of their duty to carry out the laws of the country. So, I mean, when we think of lawlessness, at one level, I say to myself, yeah, the illegals are lawless. They are breaking the law, but they're actually not breaking the law as bad as the people in the country who have a lot of political power and are consciously departing from our immigration laws for crass political gain. Hey guys, I've been talking to Sheriff Bill Waybourn of Tarrant County, Texas. Follow him on X at Bill Waybourn, Waybourn. Bill, what a pleasure. Thank you for coming on the podcast.
Thank you. It was great to be here, sir.
Are you feeling overwhelmed by the increasing cost of health insurance? Have you had enough of not having control over your healthcare dollars? Introducing ShareRight. It's healthcare done the right way. At ShareRight, you're not just a number, you're part of a caring community. Forget about paying excessive premiums. With ShareRight, you stand to save 30 to 50% compared to health insurance. So think about what you could do with all those savings. But it's more than just savings. ShareRight ensures you have access to the care you deserve precisely when you need it, from routine checkups to unexpected emergencies. With ShareRight, your healthcare is their top priority. Empower yourself today by taking control of your healthcare costs. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh to learn more. See how much you can save. Visit shareright.org/Dinesh. That's shareright.org/Dinesh for healthcare done the right way. I want to talk in this segment about the marketing and the entrepreneurial genius of Donald Trump. These are themes, by the way, covered in the book right here, Vindicating Trump. The book is out. It's in Amazon and Barnes & Noble. You're really going to like it. It's a very thoughtful book and not the usual political boilerplate. It tells the story of Trump in a fresh way. And one of its themes is Trump the entrepreneur. Now, of course, we saw Trump at McDonald's. He is, that was a stroke of genius. In fact, I really chuckled, and Debbie and I were both chuckling about MSNBC. They're like, what is the point of him going to McDonald's? What is and of course, the other guest was like, well, I don't think there is a point. I just think it's a kind of a stunt. Of course, the point is that Trump is dramatically exposing. See, it's one thing if Trump goes, no, Kamala Harris never worked at McDonald's. But Trump wasn't going for that headline. His actual headline is better. I've worked at McDonald's longer than Kamala Harris, even though I worked at McDonald's for 30 minutes. That's what Trump is going for. And so he recognizes that it's a stunt, but it's a very effective stunt. It forces the media to not only comment on it, but expose their own sort of idiocy, their own deliberate distortion of what's going on, their own attempts to fabricate some other motive for why Trump would do what he's doing. Oh, he's got to be crazy, that kind of thing. And Trump has had this flair from the very beginning. I was in one of my interviews for the film or the book, someone was asking me, well, you got to admit that Trump, was basically traveled on the success of his father. His father was a highly successful real estate man, and Trump built on that, but he did get daddy's money, and he did get the Trump brand from his dad. And I said, no, this is actually not true. That Fred Trump, and you can go back and look up Fred Trump, Trump's dad, was indeed a successful guy, but he was a successful guy on the other side of New York. In other words, on the poorer side of the tracks. His business was mainly in Queens. He had rent control apartments. He was a tough businessman, but he was also kind of an introspective man. And honestly, not a whole lot of people who didn't do business with him knew him. My point is that the Trump brand was created by Donald Trump, by the son, not the father. Why? Because Donald Trump realized that you don't create a brand, and certainly not a national brand, and certainly not an international brand, if you don't go to Manhattan. Manhattan is the place to launch, if you will, on a massive scale. So what does Trump do? He crosses the bridge, he goes over to Manhattan, and he finds a hotel, the Commodore Hotel, and he wants to buy it. Now, did his family have the money? Yes. Did his family give him the money? No. Because according to Trump, when he went to his dad and he said, hey, I'm thinking of buying the Commodore Hotel, to quote Trump himself from his book, The Art of the Deal, he says of his dad, quote, he refused to believe I was serious. He thought Trump was joking, and he was out. So what did Trump do? Trump basically had to go to banks and say, hey, listen, I've got the people at the Commodore Hotel. They've agreed to sell to me. It's $10 million, but I need loans to make that happen. I'm going to renovate the hotel, and it's going to be great. Trump, at a young age, was able to pull this deal off and that launched Trump. Now, there's a marketing component to this that I want to highlight because it ties into the political marketing that Trump now does and is just a genius at doing. But the genius comes from young Trump, because when Trump saw the Commodore Hotel for the first time, he noticed that it was right around a lot of the iconic sites of New York. Right over there was the Chrysler Building. Right over there was Grand Central Station. In fact, Trump says he noticed all kinds of people coming out of Grand Central Station. They were in suits, and many of them were coming for meetings. So they walked right by the Commodore Hotel. So Trump's point is, isn't it interesting that they walk right by this hotel, but they don't stay at the hotel? They don't have their meetings at the hotel. The hotel has a fabulous location, but the location is obviously not being properly mobilized. But Trump also realized part of it was that the Commodore Hotel looked kind of run down. It looked kind of unappealing. And so what Trump decided to do is to put reflecting glass on the outside of the hotel, on all four sides. And again, when you do this, you're building a building in New York. New York has a lot of regulations. You've got to submit it for architectural approval. And there were a lot of people who said, our architectural critics, oh, we can't do this. This is not in keeping with the style of the neighborhood. You need to have an architectural style that harmonizes with the neighborhood. Trump ignored all this. Trump's reasoning was actually pretty simple. Listen, when people see this building, I want them to see reflected in it or on it the iconic sites of New York. It's almost like the building itself becomes a giant television screen. And when people look at the Commodore, what they're seeing is Grand Central Station, the Chrysler Building, the New York skyline. And they go, wow, this building is New York. And so I want to make the point that Trump intuitively understood this. And he understood that that is part of what would make this building appealing, what would make it an event, what would take it over the top, what would take an otherwise ramshackled and somewhat rundown hotel and make it cool. And that's the thing about Trump, is he has a way, even when he's under attack. And let's think about it. The left dominates right now the institutions of coolness. Who hands out the Academy Awards? They do. So if I get an award, it's not going to be an Oscar. It's going to be like a Razzie. You're the worst actor, Dinesh. Yeah, but I was playing myself. Yeah, but you're horrible at playing yourself. So here's a Razzie for you. When the left controls the board of the Lincoln Center, the left controls Hollywood, they control even the music industry, including now a large part of country music. They control the comedians. It's very difficult to be cool on the conservative side. You have to do it by somehow going up against these cool cats. You may say outcooling them, or acting cool in a way that they cannot make you uncool. And they are very successful at making Republicans uncool until they need them. Notice how uncool they made McCain until they needed him. Notice how uncool they made Romney until they needed him. So by and large, the cool factor on the right is only at the behest of the left. Trump is almost unique in doing cool stuff, even though there is a massive engine that is trying to make him uncool. What he does is he somehow goes up against that. He goes to McDonald's, he sticks his head out the window, he gets unrehearsed reactions from people who come through the drive-thru. They can't believe it. They go out of their mind. The videos that you've probably seen some of them on social media by now, they go nuts because they can't believe that it's Trump, but they can't believe that he's serving them the French fries. So that's marketing genius on Trump's part. I mean, there's a natural aspect to it. Trump is just being Trump. I thought it was really nice when an Indian guy in the car was like, I'm just an ordinary guy. And Trump is like, no, you're not ordinary. And what Trump means by this is the aspect of Trump that I think has not been seen enough by the American people. In other words, the left keeps saying you're a bully, and Trump, he'll bully other bullies. But notice he's not bullying people like the Indian guy, right? The Indian guy, Trump is actually doing the opposite. He's elevating that guy. And so that is the natural instinct of Trump. He has a an inherent human decency toward people that he exhibits in situations like this. But I'm talking about the fact that the event itself is brilliantly conceived, brilliantly executed, and it is marketing genius. Because think about it, when you have all the media against you, what are they trying to do? They're trying to deny you coverage. They're trying to make you look scary. They're trying to make you look dictatorial. Well, if you're trying to make Trump look dictatorial, and there he is, in overalls, and he's serving people French fries, this doesn't really seem to be very much a dictatorial thing to do. Can you see General Franco, at some local Spanish restaurant serving people arepas or whatever, or tapas? No, that would never happen. So what Trump is doing, without saying any of this, all of what I'm talking about is now analysis of what Trump is doing. Trump never says I'm doing this, but what he's doing is he's undercutting the cartoonish stereotype of Trump as some kind of evil monster. He's showing people that he's not only a nice guy, but that he's a very funny guy, because his theme, of course, is that Kamala, think of it this way. Many people lie about, I went to Harvard. No, you didn't. You just went to Harvard Extension School. Or, I used to work for this company. No, you didn't. You only worked in the building. But who lies about working at McDonald's? Answer, Kamala Harris lies. She makes up the fact that she works at McDonald's. And so Trump is like, with unerring instinct, I need to expose what a total fraud this person is. And what better example than exposing the simple fact that if she'll lie about working at McDonald's, what else won't she lie about? She's a thoroughly unscrupulous, hollow character. And by the way, Tim Walz as well, right? He's I was head coach. No, you weren't. You were like some assistant to the assistant coach. You weren't head coach. I was in the military. I served in Iraq. No, you didn't. You didn't serve anywhere. You were in the Guard, and you were in the military, but when you were called upon to serve, you quickly exited the military so that you could get out of it. So all of this is the truth of the matter. And Trump has a way of not only saying, see, if it was somebody else, Mike Pence, he'd be like, I believe that this is not exactly a correct transcript of what actually happened with Kamala Harris, blah, blah, blah. By the time he's finished, everyone's already fast asleep. But with Trump, it's like, let me do something very comical, very interesting, and then look at the huge crowds. Think about it. Trump is behind the counter at McDonald's. What an iconic scene. Can you think in American presidential history of anything like this having happened before? No, it hasn't. But the point I'm trying to make here is this is not just a sort of stroke of advice that somebody gave Trump 3 days ago or a week ago. Trump himself thinks like this, and it's a kind of marketing genius that goes back to his early days.
Subscribe to the Dinesh D'Souza podcast on Apple, Google, and Spotify, or watch on Rumble, YouTube, and SalemNow.com.